I'm Steve Johnson, News Director for theDove TV. Check out our other videos and visit our website at thedove.us. Thanks.
Well, welcome back. We all watched with horror last week the high school shooting up in Washington State, Marysville, Washington. In fact, over the weekend, the third girl, 14 years old, passed away as a result of the injuries of that shooting, which now made a total of 3 people, the shooter and 2 young teenagers that have died. How does this happen? Why does it happen? And what seemingly was a very charming young man coming from a very strong traditional family, and yet something went horribly wrong. Well, with us is Dr. Gregg JAntz. He's the author of Raising Boys by Design. And of course, he'll want to explain primarily why the perpetrators of these school shootings are boys. There's a picture of the book. If you've never had a copy of it, if you're watching on theDove TV, you may want to pick this up. It's a great resource, Raising Boys by Design. And he's a therapist and author, and explains how boys are losing touch with spiritual and cultural values passed on by an intact family where the father is present, which is pretty unique. Now, in Seattle, Washington, as we know, last week, it was an incredible thing to see happen as we watched this young man who came from an intact family and did the shooting. How did this go wrong? Well, hopefully Dr. JAntz can help us get a handle on this. And so, Dr. JAntz, are you there? Okay, I just need the audio out here so I can hear you. And good to see you again. Thank you, my friend. I know you're busy. You're probably dealing a lot with this this issue. And again, your book is terrific. It's available at the bookstores. Let me encourage you to check it out, Raising Boys by Design. Well, the big question is that it looks like the shooter in this Washington State high school up there in Marysville, Washington, came from an intact family. How do you explain this one?
Well, that's a good question. Came from an intact family, but what we do know is that, almost all of the shooters we've seen in school shootings are in this age profile, and many times the family at least appears to be intact. But some of these are difficult in that young men who do not have a way to deal with their emotions in a healthy way will resort oftentimes to violence. There is indication that there was bully behavior in this as well.
Really? Explain that.
Sure. We have a situation here where a young man was likely bullied. We have a situation with a girl that there was issues around the girl. Unfortunately, she was the one that died last night. We also have a situation that there was a lot in social media. There was a lot of chatter going on in Twitter and Facebook. And if you go back and begin to look at what was going on days before in social media, you saw something very significant building.
Was that bullying?
Well, there was a lot of warning signs that were happening in the social media.
This is unbelievable, and I guess again another sign. Do parents know what's going on in the social media of their children? So you say that he meets a profile. What is that profile?
Well, we have there was another what appeared on the outside as you used the word intact. Likely was not all that intact. There were issues going on for this young man that were not being dealt with. That's why I say if we go back and we look at what was going on and Twitter, Facebook, and some of the social media, we could see early on there were issues. And probably by looking at the social media, we knew more than what the parents did. Wow.
Adolescence being what it is and emotions being what they are during that time of someone's life, was there kind of like a love triangle going on with this?
Well, it could have been that, absolutely. But we know that we had a young man that there were issues related to anger and insecurities as a young man. We know that there was access to weapons, though we have a situation where a young man had hunting experience and there was just too easy access to weapons. And we're finding these shootings, I mean, we've got an issue that's got to be addressed here. If you look at the number of shootings, and if you look at the profile, these are generally young men. Something significant has happened that has been traumatic, and they have begun to isolate quickly from their social groups and begin to act violently.
All right, so what was the traumatic occasion of this young man? Could you pinpoint it?
Well, the traumatic was probably relationship with a girl. There was some pretty graphic and vulgar communications going on through Twitter and through Facebook.
Wow. So what are we to take away from this?
Well, one of the things we're going to take away from this, and I'm so glad that you asked, and I talk about it in the book, Raising Boys by Design, we're going to take away, you got to be engaged in your teens' world. We've got to know what's going on in social media, and we've got to decide what's okay and what's not. What's our family rules around technology? Who are the mentors who speak into the lives of our young men? For example, let's go back to the social media. Many times parents and families do not have boundaries around social media, and we've got the average exposure to pornography on the internet for young men about age 10 or 11 right now. And parents have no idea the degree of communications and the type of communications that are going on in social media.
So, are you suggesting some kind of curfews on some of this stuff?
Well, curfews, I'm suggesting boundaries, and that's one of the things I talk about. You've got to have boundaries around technology. What that means is boundaries around time spent. You've got to have kids you've got to be engaged in their world, not to sets ourselves up. Now, I have two boys, I have a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old. I'm living this real time. And I see and I know we've got to be engaged. There's boys and there's technology. We need to also remember our young men are more slow to put their feelings into words. So there could be a lot of hurt and anger going on. You may not always see it coming out verbally with young men. This is oftentimes why if they don't have a way of dealing with those emotions, it can, and we've seen it here, go violent and deadly.
From the time you saw the course of bullying going on with the social media to when the actual act occurred, that period appears to be short. So this thing accelerated fast. Is that right?
It was within a 3-day period. Yes, it did accelerate quickly. Absolutely.
What do you think is going on in a young boy's mind to do something that violent? I mean, where did the idea come from? Is this a copycat crime? What is it that would go that violent?
Well, two things. One is they see no other way out. So the anger and the intensity is so great. I mean, this is such an intensity that there's no other solution, and they lose rational thought. So emotion of anger, and specifically the emotion of revenge, of vengefulness, takes over, and all rational thinking goes out. They are not in what we'll call the right mind. And they probably have had a history of not really being able to process anger and disappointment. Are they used to things going their way? They may be used to bullying others. They're usually a lot of power and control issues, and then suddenly they feel powerless.
All right, so if a parent begins to see a trend in the social media of their child, what do? How do they react but not overreact or underreact?
You know, one of the things that we do, first of all, is we get in the game with our kids. We don't be afraid to talk about it. We've got to have a system, I'm going to suggest, of monitoring, putting boundaries around time. You know, if you have a 12-year-old boy, for example, what's your family rules around texting? Is it okay for them to text or have other social media contact with girls? You know, at 12 and 14 and 13 years old, they're not equipped to deal with some of the communications that are going on. You know, we've got kids 12, 13 years old, sexing, sending pictures of themselves, pornographic pictures of themselves. And this, we've got to get in there and talk about what's going on and then put appropriate boundaries in place. You know, our family, we even have something called a technology detox. And a technology detox means we take a break from technology in a day and just set it aside. We know that this idea of overstimulating the brain through intensity and technology, and I'm speaking to technology because it's almost always there and present, and there's warning signs that come out through social media. That said, we've got to get involved. The rewiring of a brain early on. You got a kid who's 6th grader, 5th grader, and they're on technology 2 or 3 hours a day. This actually, and the science shows us that we begin to rewire parts of our brain, and our brain craves more and more stimulation, which is obviously a setup later on for such things as addiction.
All right, Dr. Jantz, how do people get a hold of you if they want to correspond with you?
Well, one of the things is I've got some great information on this on the website, A Place of Hope, aplaceofhope.com. And I'm passionate about helping our kids. aplaceofhope.com, and you can get the resource, Raising Boys by Design.
All right, aplaceofhope.com. Last question, and sorry, it's probably a biggie and it deserves an hour, but give it to me a few seconds here, and that is, if you were a counselor there today in the high school, how would you be counseling those kids?
Yes, and there's counselors today in the high school. And first of all, one of the things that we want to understand is this trauma will have an effect on their lives, whether you were there, whether you saw it or not, the fact that it happened nearby you. And I think one of the things, we've got to let them express their feelings. This could trigger for some kids some fear that something could happen again. If you've got kids that are overexposed, maybe they're in elementary school and they've seen a lot of this on the news, limit the exposure to the news. Our younger kids, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, they can't really tell if they see it on the news. They may think it's happening again or happening right now. Mm-hmm. Remember, developmentally dealing with the kids in the different levels. I also want these kids to come together as a stronger community than ever before, but we've got to hear them out. And we've got to create a new sense of safety and emotional safety.
All right, Dr. Jantz, thank you. Thanks for your time, letting us have a few moments. I know you're probably very busy these days. Again, aplaceofhope.com. Check it out, or check out his book, Raising Boys by Design, by Dr. Gregg JAntz. Thank you, my friend. Talk to you soon.
You got it. Talk to you again. Thank you.
We'll be right back.